Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Porcupines, vermin,
Beavers. Beavers.
cottontail rabbit.
Here comes Peter Cottontail.
Up and down the bunny trail, hippity hopping, Easter's
Easter's on its way. Except like not at
Not
all.
even close. Oh, Mel. Hello.
Anita, you're alive. How did this happen?
I just, last week when we recorded, I had just come back or was coming back from Colorado. Now I am just barely getting back from Idaho. And I had to drive myself, and it was touch and go.
She texted me and told me that she had to pull over and sleep or something
just pulled-
in the middle of the day.
I pulled
This is at,
over
like 3 p.m.
and closed my eyes for just like 2 minutes. Because they just really want to close when I'm driving. So,
That is so interesting.
I know. It like lulls me to sleep, the car.
Well, I'm glad you're back and that you made it.
Yeah, can I tell you about something weird that happened while I was there?
Yeah.
So, my sister lives in Idaho, and I was going to drop off 2 of my kids to spend the week with her. And she invited us to go to a Shakespeare play in the park, which in and of itself was kind of fun, except for that we got there halfway through, and so I had no idea what was going on. I didn't even know what play we were watching. And my kids are like, "What's going on?" I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, and Shakespeare, you don't know what's going on anyway, even if you know the play that's going on. So after the play was done, I'm far, far away from home. I'm not in my community. And I hear somebody say, "Anita, is that Anita?" And I turn and I didn't immediately recognize this person, but then he reminded me who it was, and it was somebody that I knew in high school. So then we had to have that whole conversation about the catch-up conversation, right? The update conversation. Oh, where do you live? What do you do for your job? All of this stuff. And I immediately got all sweaty and, you know, that like fight or flight feeling in your body. Because the whole time he was talking to me, I was like, does he know Jason died? Does he know that my husband is dead? Like the whole conversation, I was like, when am I gonna put that in there? Does he know? Does he already know? am I going to have to tell him? This is going to be really awkward when he like asks, is he going to ask me about, you know, all of these things? So I was just like, and I just felt so, inside of me. And it took several minutes of talking, and it was kind of like, I didn't want to like say it, you know, but kind of I did just want to blurt it out and be like, my husband died. And then finally he said something about swimming. And I was like, yeah, my husband was a swimmer too. And he's like, oh yeah, I heard he passed away. And it was like, okay, like, you know, but then it's also awkward after you have that, you know, cause then it's like, what else do you talk about? You know, it's
and conversation.
Yeah. And okay, bye. But I felt so weird afterward. I ran to my car. I was done being social. I sat in there and I was like, I just need nobody to talk to me for a few minutes because I feel like traumatized by that whole conversation. Just the like, when is it going to come up? How do I bring it up? Does he know? Has he heard? You know what I'm saying? Because I haven't seen this person for, 15, 20 years. So
that's stressful.
It was really weird. And I was really surprised at my response after it was all said and done. Like, it didn't just go away. It stayed with me for like 2 or 3 hours after it happened. I just still felt that kind of like unquiet, shaky, shook up. I was shook.
Did you employ any useful strategies to bring your senses down?
0. None.
Okay. I've been thinking about this week because the more that we have these episodes where we get heightened sensitivities, the best thing we can do is at least try to bring it down. But it's like the last thing we think about, right? Because we're like in the frozen moment. That's my thing is like when I get frozen, I can't do a thing. Or I'm like, I know all the tools. I know this. And it's just like I don't move. And so one thing I've been trying to do is be cognizant of that and at least try something.
Yeah.
So
well, that's smart.
Not to hijack your story or anything, but like, I know what you mean. Because you texted me in the middle of your 2 to 3 hours of feeling stress. I remember. So shoot, I'm sorry.
Well, and here's the thing. I did go into a room and close the door and just tried to be by myself for a little while because I was just feeling so weird. But I was at my sister's house. There's 33,000 kids there. It was a really hard environment to try and like employ some of those tactics. I'm not saying that like I, was actually thinking about that, but I was like, I needed to be quiet for a minute. I need to not have all of this extra input. It was like too much stimulation. So I did go into a room, and that's when I was texting you, was when I was by myself. But then all the kids are running in and,
Yeah, you like can't control who's going to come and pound on the door because you're a mom.
Yes, and I was like, is it okay if I just leave all these kids here and just run away? But it was fine. I'm okay now, but I was really surprised at that, how weird it was. I felt so weird.
It's so surprising when that comes back, right?
Yes. So I'm curious to know if other people have experienced that also. So tell us in the Widow Wives Club or on Facebook or on Instagram, or send us an email or something. I want to know I'm not alone.
You're not alone, at least with me.
I know.
I'm pretty sure 100% of the widows
That's kind of what I think.
Like this happen.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what I've been doing?
Yes.
To help with this?
Oh, yeah.
Because so we've talked a little bit about emotional freedom tapping before. And there's an app you can get. You can subscribe, I think, for the premium price, or I believe they do have a free account as well, and it's called Tapping Solutions. Anyway, it's based on the meridian systems of the body and calming them down. So what I've been doing, and every time I have like a time where I am, what do they call it, in the state of hyper arousal, where you're just like, woo!
Yeah.
I know. It's such a fancy word.
And it sounds, can we just kind of get it out there that it kind of...
It's kind of gross.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit risque.
I know. Every time I hear that word, I'm like, can we please change it to something else? Because like all y'all in the mental health community talk about it all day long, and I listen to these things and read about them, but I'm still like, I'm a 10-year-old boy laughing.
Like, it kind of has a sexual connotation, guys. Can we call it something else? Okay, we're going to get over that. We're done. Keep going.
Okay, so let's say you're stressed out and you're in panic mode and your heart rate is elevated and you maybe start dissociating a little bit. So that's usually when we're freezing. If you are a freezer, that's me, raise his hand. So what I started doing this week, and it doesn't have to even be a major like panic attack sort of a thing. It can just be these little ones that still affect you. There are certain points on the body that you can tap, and one of them is, they call it the karate chop point. And so that's what I've started doing this week. Like, and I've had to do it like 6 or 7 times just in the past like 12 hours because I have a lot going on in my brain and my body. And it does help. It's not like it fixes it forever and ever and ever because we still continue to live life. But sometimes I'll just sit there and then like I'll tap the side of my hand and I'll try to breathe in and out. And if you breathe in and then you breathe out, when you breathe out, that's what slows your breathing and your heart rate down and kind of calms you. So
yeah, that's all about your vagus nerve. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may have heard Anita talk with her medical professional friends about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system.
Correct.
So what that means for us lay people, like musicians and normal people and moms and bankers, and grocery store
and
workers
and candlestick makers
and Jack in the Boxes, it means that when you breathe in, that's your sympathetic nervous system that helps you to get geared up. Is that correct? Right? It makes your heart rate go up. That's the sympathetic nervous system. Did you know this?
I did not. I've never heard this like this. I'm like, keep saying more, and then I will agree with you.
This is what I read in The Body Keeps the Score. That's
okay.
why I'm saying it. Now I'm scared because you're not reacting.
No,
You're a doctor.
you need to keep saying it. Keep saying this.
Okay. Then when you breathe out, that's your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what calms your heart rate down. And we need both of those in our lives. But in order to calm yourself in a panic attack, the most important type of breathing is the out. That's why they suggest meditation and mindfulness, because it helps you slow your breath and prevent dissociation, or to help you to stop becoming dissociated and to then become more one with your mind and your body. So also the tapping on the side of the hand like helps regulate the meridians and can help calm your organs or something. There's like, I'm sure we'll do a widowsode on it, and I'm just kind of remembering, I'm speaking from my memory on this, but I've used this where I'm like, if I'm in the car and I'm at a stoplight or even driving, I just like tap my hand. Or you can do it if you're in front of people, tap your hand. The other points are on the top of your head, in the middle of your eyebrows, like the inner parts of your eyebrows, the outer edge of your eyebrows, and you tap with like 2 fingers. And then below your eye, kind of on your cheekbone, then right below your nostrils, in between your mouth and your nose, and then in the crease of your chin, and then on your collarbone, left and right side. And then this is the best.
Your armpits.
Like you're a monkey. Yeah, your armpits. It's like you look like one of the barrel of monkeys. You can just...
You do it
like
on
3
this?
inches.
Because I do it this way.
Well, yeah, I do it. I cross my arms and do it because it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the points. But I've noticed for me personally that I can even just do the one on the karate chop point if I'm in a public place or
and you don't want to look like a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, like all last week where I was on Zoom meetings all week for that online camp I was doing. And the whole time, if I was feeling kind of a panic thing coming on, boom, karate chop point. Nobody could tell. So that's my tip for next time you get in that situation and you can't escape.
That's a good idea. I've used that with my daughter when she's having full-blown panic attacks, but never for like small things. So that's a good idea, to not wait for it to be super big to try and do those kind of things.
And I had a therapy appointment yesterday, and we were talking about this, and because I have been struggling a little bit more with panic recently, and she's like, and I go, I freeze and then I don't do it. And she's like, you really need to have a coping strategy to where you like can unfreeze a little bit, just enough so that you can help regulate your system, because it makes it easier in the long run if you can at least lower your stress by like even a little percentage. So she's like, just do something. Don't just let it go. Like, because I think a lot of us were like, well,
just write it out.
I can't do anything. I'll just write it out and I'll just sit with it. But it's like, just do something small so that it can bring it down a little by little. So that app, the difference between the app and just you tapping is the app is guided and they have different topics in there. And there's a guy that goes through like talking points and different thoughts. So, but it is something you can do on your own without guided stuff.
I think part of it is, even if you don't believe in like chakras and meridians and all of that kind of things, it's a change to your normal routines and your patterns. And it's like you're turning your brain and you're focusing on this situation. And I think sometimes it just kind of gives you a break. Like we've talked about your brain being in that pattern, and it can, it just gives you a different it
upsets the cycle.
Yeah. And then you're focused on this thing, and then it kind of disrupts it. And then by the time you're done, you're like, well, that helped. So, I mean, my daughter has been in like full blown freaking out, can barely do it. And we do those and it's a lot better afterwards. And it's kind of like, why? I don't care why, but it's working. Just keep doing it.
It's kind of like EMDR. You know how EMDR is just so weird? Yeah. And you're like, how in the world?
No, but okay.
And then it does help. Yeah. Anything to like, we like to use the door jam analogy, just to put a little tiny door jam in there so that maybe the door doesn't fully close on the panic cycle, and it upsets it just a little bit.
Gives you an escape
like a circuit breaker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are your all's experiences with that? Let us know.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
So you're feeling better because you're done with your crazy week. So you can breathe out now. You can exhale.
Yeah. And I actually had a really great week with my kids.
Yeah.
I had a great team and it was fun.
Well, I mean, it's like we talk about there's eustress and distress, and this can be a eustress thing, but it's still stressful. It's still like more than you're used to doing, and there's a lot to do and a lot to get done. And so it feels stressful even though you're having a good time.
And it was a lot of work. Like I had such crazy long packed days, and I wasn't feeling well, like health-wise either. So I made it. I can't believe I made it through. So yeah, that was a huge week. It's my biggest week of the summer always. So it happened.
Good job.
The end.
Well, I had a friend visit from California, and she really was like, "Can I please be on your podcast?" And I was like, "Well, Mel's not even here, and you're also not a widow. So hi, Sarah." She just wanted.
What is she?
She just wanted to. She's like, "I just want to be interviewed. I love your podcast so much." She listens to it while she's doing home improvement, and she says it's really helped her. So
does she do a lot of grout work, and she thinks of us when she's like doing grout on her tile?
No, she was pulling up a floor. She's been remodeling her kitchen for like 7.5 years, but really it's been like a year. So.
Okay, Sarah, if you want to talk to us, you can talk to us if you have a good topic from a grief civilian's point of view.
She totally will
think on it. Okay, text Anita.
Okay, so you guys, the Widow Wives Club is where it's at. We have such an awesome and supportive group. This week I made a reel about just Mel and my coming together and making the podcast. And this is going to sound silly, but I'm just like, this whole thing is bigger than just Mel and I. And when I was putting that together, I like felt that deep inside of me. It felt like such meaning and purpose to all of this, that we're gathering and connecting people who are just really in the suckiest of situations, and just the beauty that comes out of that, and how we watch you guys interact with each other and support each other and just listen to the complaining and the, the help me outs and the please tell me I'm not going crazy. And it just makes me so honored to be a part of all of your journeys.
And to see the wins too, because there's kind of it runs the gamut of topics in there. And I love seeing how supportive people are when others have wins or others have more loss. It's so great. We're so grateful to be part of this community. So thank you for all of you that listen and all of you that support your fellow widows and everything that you all do. We could not do this without you.
It's so special. So
it's so fun to have friends from all over the world. We would never know you guys if it weren't for the internet and these podcasts and for you guys participating. So thank you.
If you're not a part of the Widow Wives Club and we sold you, then come join. It's on Facebook. There's links in all of our places that you can find it if you're having a hard time. And then just make sure you answer all the questions, including the group rules. Mel, do you know that we probably turn more people away than we let into the club?
Yes, I hate it.
We're in such a situation because we really want it to be a safe place. And so we turn a lot of people away who probably need to be in there. So just make sure you read all the instructions and do all of the things so we can let you in there. But funny, Mel, we got a request last week of a guy dressed up in a general's, like an army guy. And the first question is, are you a widow or widower? And his answer was
no.
And then it said, the second question is, you realize this isn't a dating site. Tell us why you want to be in the club. And what was his answer?
I want wife.
It was like, dude, you're not even a good scammer. You're not supposed to come right out and tell us.
And tell us about what his job description was on his Facebook profile.
Oh, I don't remember that. What did it say?
I remember oil rig.
Oh, was that
maintenance worker?
Why was he wearing an army costume then?
Because he's a scammer.
And not a very good one. That one made us laugh out loud. He's like, I want a wife. I'm like, okay. At least we easily could decline him.
Why is it always an oil rig?
I don't know.
Why?
Yeah.
Come on. How about a programmer?
No, or a doctor that works for the UN. Also, I get a lot of those. Anyway,
you guys, if you're not following our Instagram, we've made some reels, and Anita has the best outfits ever, and she reads real requests that we get from scammers, and it's the best.
It's funny, and I just ask myself, why do we have so many wigs in this house? But we do. It's fine.
I got a piano scam today.
I mean, when you say piano scam, I'm like, how can there be... Scammers are so creative to even know that there can be a piano scam.
It's true. This one was like, I have a very beautiful baby grand piano I want to give away. Please email me for more info. It's so stupid. And then they hook you in, and then, I don't know, I guess people are like, yeah, here's my Venmo. I don't get it.
See, that's the thing. I don't even understand
scam.
How it works. Like, they want... I don't know. Anyway... That's neither here nor there, all of that. But we have gotten scammers, and they're funny and whatever. But except for they're not funny, because I know that they actually...
They're a-holes.
They work sometimes, and we know people who have given them money. And so, dang it, stop being scuzzy scammers.
And if you're in the Widow Wives Club and you get a scam message, please post it, and let's joke about it, and let all our other widow friends know not to accept this person.
Yeah, or people like them. Okay, Mel, shall we do our Patreon shout out?
Aye, aye, Captain Oil Rigger.
That was supposed to be like the whistle.
For those of you who would like to help support our podcast, we have a Patreon, and that is at patreon.com/WWDN. It is a way that creators can get support from their followers, and we have 4 tiers available starting at just $5 a month. And now remember that $5 a month is like 2 ounces of a Starbucks drink. and people go there every day. This is for a whole month. So if you feel so inclined, please consider joining our Patreon. One of the perks that you get at certain tiers is you get a shout out in episode, and we are about to do that.
All right, our first shout out is going to our secret dead husband, and this might be, some people might not even know where this is coming. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Our dead husband!
Oh my gosh.
It's from SpongeBob SquarePants for all of you who are too old or don't have children. Mel wonders all the time what she's doing with me.
Constance Dahlbach does not live in a pineapple, but she is also our dead husband.
David Kelly.
Done, Satterwhite.
Ivan the Misner, wishing you luck.
Yes, Kat. Now unto our widow wives.
Amy.
Amy Sapp.
Ashley Hahn.
Christina Shiflett.
Danielle Ketterberg.
Not a Debbie Downer.
Dennis Brazo.
Jenny Taylor.
Who was once a rodeo queen.
And also, there's lots of articles in newspapers about her lately.
Oh.
I saw it at my mom's.
What? Jenny Wang.
Kathy Murray.
Kirsten Stromberg. Tears to you, my friend.
Yes, yes. Laura Bradbury.
Leslie Webb.
Missy Schubert.
Rachel Barbosa. Whoop, whoop.
Sarah Morris.
Sylvia the Shore.
The Winehouse Cornejo.
Widow
That's her
Besties.
name.
Anna Tracy.
Please join a Zoom hang. Christina Scambato.
Christina Anderson.
Please join a Zoom hang. Lindsay Holmgren. Christina Scambato.
Dawn Barber.
Diana Becker.
Emily Thornton.
Emily Toledo.
Aaron Posick.
Gabe Lozano.
Ian Sini.
Ileana Bell.
I'm jealous of the baseball game.
Jamie Aliota.
My mom.
Jenny Barrow.
Jocelyn Milo.
Fancy Lady Kirsch.
Katie Radcliffe.
Kara Scarrow.
Lori Farrington.
Marie Hoffman.
Marjorie Lewis.
Mary McGowan.
Peter Rukavina.
Sarah Kennedy.
Shannon.
Sunshine Haven.
Tammy Schwartz.
Tara Wallace. Valerie. Have a nice weekend. Packer.
And Disco Ball Wendy.
Yes.
Thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We love and appreciate you. And come join us on the Patreon if you want us to pronounce your name wrong. We're all here for it. If you don't want to join the Patreon, but you still want to support the podcast, you can buy us a taco. And yes, we really do eat tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedo now.
And if you are in need of therapy, we have a sponsorship with BetterHelp.com. And our unique link is trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. I get my therapy through BetterHelp, and I love it so much. And one other thing that's really fun about them, mental health is fun, I love mental health, is that they have groupinars and webinars all the time. And even if you miss them, you can watch the replays. So I watched one on borderline personality disorder today.
You're just a ball of fun, Mel. You like to...
I'm trying to research real situations in my life that I come across. So...
Blah.
Yeah, so it's they have every topic you can imagine, and they are actually from their therapists that do those as well. So it's very nice. I highly recommend it. And again, that's trybetterhelp, HELP.com/WWDN.
Should we get to the episode, Mel?
Yes.
Let's do this thing. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two young widows, and we love taking you on this journey with us, even though we're sad that you're on the journey with us.
And it sucks.
And we're trying to figure out widow we do now.
We do now. This episode is sponsored by the Misner Family Foundation in memory of Elisabeth Misner.
1, 2, 3.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Anita,
What?
who do we have with us today? Are you okay, first of all? What is happening?
I am okay, barely. I was just scooting my chair in and making terrible noises.
Great.
Today we have a special guest. Her name is Rachel. Rachel, thank you for joining us. Rachel Engstrom. I hope I said that right. That's what I assume. Yeah, she's nodding like
yes, that
I
is
did it.
correct. Many people get it wrong, so I appreciate it.
Like what do they try? What are their
Ingstorm. I get a lot of Ingstorm.
Oh, that does sound more exotic, though.
It does.
Ingstorm.
It sounds like a Marvel character or something.
Yes. I don't know, Rachel. I think you might want to go with it.
Well, Rachel is a widow, so she is a superhero. That's for sure.
Just consider it. That's all I'm asking. Rachel, where are you talking to us from?
I am in Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis.
So it gets super cold in the winter there, right?
It does, and super gross, hot, and humid in the summer.
Tell me why you want to live there. You're not being a very good travel agent right now.
You know what? I love it here. I love the snow. I love the snow. I moved here when I was 18, not knowing one person to go to the University of Minnesota. And I ended up meeting a guy that I married. I met him when I was 19 and didn't plan on staying, but it just worked out. And I have a whole family of friends here. So that's why I'm still here. Yeah, I grew up in Jackson, Michigan. It was 40,000 people, but very conservative, very white town. I mean, I'm white, but it's like I went to a daycare center and a church where my mom worked in downtown, which was quote unquote like inner city compared to like where I went to elementary school. And all my friends were Mexican and Hispanic and Black. And then in first grade, everybody was white. And I was like, something's wrong here. So I just wanted to move somewhere with lots of cultural diversity and, more opportunities and music. And I live in the land of, Prince and concerts and all kinds of things. I think in my 20 plus years of living here pre-COVID, I've been to like 180 shows. So there's just a lot more opportunity, a lot more culture, a lot more acceptance here.
There is something about the creativity community up there around the Great Lakes. I don't know what it is up there. It's unbelievable. Like Michigan, Minnesota. So I know what you're talking about. Well, awesome, Rachel. That sounds exotic, way more exotic than first grade, for sure. Also, rest in peace, Prince.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was so devastating. And then, last summer I watched my cities burn after George Floyd was murdered. So it was just crazy. And just seeing all of it, and you're just thinking like, what are people thinking? But then again, I have white privilege. I have no idea what it's like to be Black and see somebody murdered again and again and again, all those, variables and whatnot. But I mean, what's really sad is like, so I get the paper digitally on my iPad, and you can really only read so many stories about COVID. And that sounds awful, but it's true. And like my own brother, who's 14 years older than me, he was literally seconds from death. Like he had to decide, he was awake like 72 hours in the ICU over Christmas and had to teach himself to breathe different from what his body naturally wanted to. And it's like, he literally had to be like, you can't die. You can't die. You have to keep doing. So, I mean, I don't mean to downplay COVID by any means, but what's really awful is all of these, hundreds of mom and pop businesses here. Not only are they affected by COVID, but they were burned down, and a lot of them just didn't have money for insurance or the proper amount of insurance or whatever. So people are out of their livelihoods, and it's just crazy time for so many reasons here.
I'm so curious to know from a widow's perspective what all of that you've been living through and watching up in Minnesota, how that's been for your grief, and also knowing your story of grief and watching like so many others, especially with all the social issues that are around today. How has that been?
Yeah. So for me, my husband actually died 8 years ago. So for me, we'll talk about it. Like I wrote a book, I wrote how I navigated through all of it. For me, I've been seeing how I wrote this book. So it's Wife, Widow, Now What? And then the byline is how I navigated the world of cancer, and you can too. I didn't realize until I started going on podcasts and talking about it so much, this book is really applicable to any sort of catastrophic loss, illness, COVID, whatnot. I mean, it's just, I feel so grateful, that I was there with him, because we can talk about it. You can ask me, whatever. But he had leukemia. So I was there throughout all of it. But I mean, how many people have just not been able to be with their person or their family as they're dying? Like, I can't believe not having that closure. Like, I was parts of, so he died in 2013, and the amount of social media and support groups and things have just blown up that I didn't have those opportunities at that time. I mean, it was like people in their 60s support groups I could go to. And I was like, no, you know, my person, I got robbed. You were with your person 30, 40 years. We're just in different places. I didn't want to access that. But just in these groups, it was, you know, there were women that their person came back from Afghanistan and then took their lives, different things like that, you know, from PTSD and whatnot. Or, you know, they went to work. And I knew someone from through the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society I did during my late husband's illness. And then the year after he died, I did half marathon training programs, not a runner, walker, but I did these programs where you raise money, you go from like no athletic ability to be able to do a half marathon. And within that, I got support that I didn't have other places. And there was someone that I met that she was just doing it to do it. And it turns out now she's a widow. Her husband, she had 2 kids under 10, and her husband worked in like heating and air conditioning. And this was a year after my husband died. So it would have been like 2014. He just got stung by a wasp one day, didn't know he was allergic. He went in the ICU and died the next day. So, I mean, it's like, whereas I watched my husband who had leukemia get sick, get really, really sick, then go into remission, was good for a year and a half, and then got sick again, and then had a bone marrow transplant, and his body just fell apart and he died. But it made sense in the grand scheme of things. It didn't, but it made sense that his body fell apart. Right now you have COVID, which is this horrific disease where it's just spread and it's all over and there's no rhyme or reason. Like my brother, he worked from home. He has 3 girls, he has a wife. While he was in the ICU, literally almost dying, his wife and 2 other 3 girls got sick, but 1 didn't. So it's such a weird dynamic of what is, what isn't. But I feel so much grace and gratefulness that I was able to be with my husband and see why he died. And it was sensical, where so right now, I just feel so heartbroken for so many people because they don't have the opportunity to have that closure, to say goodbye, to do any of those things.
Yeah, we had a prior guest whose husband died of leukemia during COVID. So she had the worst of both of those worlds, although she was with him when he actually died. But through the sickness, there was times where he had to be by himself, and she just, you know, FaceTime and those types of things. I think it's interesting because we have talked about how COVID, the collective feeling of trauma, has felt familiar to widows. It's been kind of like, oh yes, I felt this feeling before. And for some of us, it's been like, I know I can do this. And for some of us, it's just added to the trauma of it, you know, depending on where you are in your healing and in your process. So I totally concur with you on that it's just a different form of the same thing.
It is. So I have to tell you, when my book came out, I was like, I've self-published on Amazon, and I'm like, how do I get this out? Who can I proposition? Because I want to, because it's
proposition.
Yes,
Rachel.
So it's such a valuable resource, and it's like, I mean, I emailed Oprah, right, but she hasn't gotten back to me.
Come on, Oprah.
Like, it's one of those things where, you know, people need it. So it's like the first half is how to navigate illness, insurance, disability, finances, all of it, everything when people want to help. The last half is me as a widow, how I navigated it, insurance, finances, figuring out who I am, right? Getting a hysterectomy because I have horrible health myself. So it's like learning all these forms of grief and whatnot. And I mean, thank God I have my master's in social work. So I at least knew a little bit how to take care of myself and, you know, mental health and all that. But I met this young woman online underneath #CancerWife last October. Her name is Lindsay. We're like sisters now. She's in Winnipeg, and she took care of her husband for 2.5 years. He had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, same kind my husband had. She took care of him 2.5 years. He discharged from the hospital in May of 2020. She was admitted the next day and she got acute lymphoblastic leukemia as well, to the point where like it's so rare, right? How would that happen? That they were on the news, they were in the newspaper, and then 4 months later, he died. So she had to go through her treatment in the hospital without him there for 4 months. I can't imagine, because I was with my husband. And then when he died, her parents had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks before they could even see her. So now she can't even grieve yet because she's fighting for her life, having chemo like every week, all the time. So as soon as the borders open in Canada, she's just like 7 hours north of us. We're going to go see her. But she went from like not even wanting to talk on the phone to we like FaceTime several times a week. And we talk almost every day. But it's crazy because it's just such a crap time to be a widow or widower or go through these things, because you really are. I felt isolated, but at least I could like go to a friend's house or, do those things where you can't do that. I mean, you can't even be treated for an illness and have your people there. So it's just a really odd time. And like just talking to children, as you know, it's like really hard to explain. Like I was having my dad tell my stepdaughter, like, she's 9, like, he's 82. This has never happened, because I mean, we talk about like, we didn't have tablets in the car, just look out the window. We didn't have this, we didn't have that. Like, just shush. We didn't have Netflix. We had to, like, if you missed the show and it was on, you missed it. But let alone
you had to VCR that thing, man. You had to record it and then pause for the commercials.
Right. But let alone
life was rough.
Let alone now, we've never had a time where you can't see your friends, where you can't do all these things. And it's like, when they're in tears because they miss their friends, you just feel so bad because you can't imagine being tiny and needing that. And, it's just such a weird, what's crazy is like, when we're dead in 60, 70, 80 years, what are the history books going to say? It's just crazy.
I wonder the same thing, if they're going to be like, oh, they blew it. I hope not. I hope it won't be like that. Yeah. So, Rachel, do you want to take us back? You said that you met your husband when you were going to school. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him and your life before cancer?
Sure. His name was Grayson. He was really sweet. He was like one of those gosh golly nice people.
Aww.
Like his nurses in the hospital, he'd be like, can I trouble you to do this? And they would like laugh at him like, dude, that's her job. Like, so he was almost 7 years older than me. I met him at a birthday party of a mutual friend. I'm 5'5", he was 6'2". I didn't realize till after he died, most guys are not that tall. I just assumed everybody was that tall. So we dated for 3 years. And then when I was 22, I graduated in May, got my first job in June, like my first real adult job in June. And then in August, we got married. And he worked nights. So he worked at a printing factory where, how like if you go to like the style, like a stylist or a bookstore or whatever, the shiny bags, he would like mix the colors of ink that got printed on those. So he worked like 3 to 11 p.m. So the whole time I was with him, so September of 2001.
You never saw him.
Yeah. September of 2001 through January of 2011. I never saw him Monday through Friday. So when we were and I think that I credit that's how we had such a good marriage. But we would fight over the stupidest crap. And I write about all this in my book, but like this little apartment that we had, we of course didn't have a dishwasher, and I would be so passive aggressive, like wash your dishes. But he would be so tired, he would get home from work and you want to hang out for a few hours. Like we do at like 5 or 6 p.m. Right. So he'd go to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning, but he couldn't do the dishes because the kitchen was right by our bedroom. Because it would have woken me up. But then he would be so tired that he'd get up, then he'd have an hour and then have to run out the door to work. So they wouldn't get done. And I would be like, I am not doing his dishes. So I would like stack them on a cookie sheet on the stove, and then they'd be they're like 3 weeks. And then I'd be like, yeah! So I just do them. But I mean, those were the kind of things we fought about, but we just like really loved each other, really appreciated each other. knew that God had put each other in our lives for a reason. And then in summer, fall of 2010, I started having this horrific pelvic pains. I was driving home from work one day and literally like felt like what I assume would be childbirth. I wrote out the pain and literally looked down and expected a baby to come out. It was that horrific. I mean, I can't explain the level of pain. And I had an exploratory surgery that fall, and it turned out I had endometriosis and was told I might never have children. So I was very anxious and depressed and, went through all of that. And then on New Year's Eve of 2010, he gets a fortune cookie and it says, "You're about to have a major life change." We have no idea. 15 days later, he's diagnosed with cancer. Let alone he had a coworker say, "Hey, Grayson, you look really skinny and pale. What do you have? Leukemia?" Like, how bad would that guy feel like later?
Oh,
right. So
plus, when in the history of ever has a fortune cookie been right?
Right.
Never.
Right.
Never, ever, 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 never.
So he was hospitalized the first 5 weeks. I'm running back and forth trying to figure out finances, all these different things. His dad died when he was a teen. His mom lives 90 miles away. She was a very horrifically toxic, mean person in my life, which is why I've changed everyone's names in my book except mine. Because I wanted to write a frank book about family relations, what it's like. Things are not perfect, especially through illness and grief and whatnot. I have not talked to her in pretty soon. It'll be 8 years. It's just the 8th anniversary of his death in April. But my parents were in Michigan. I have a sibling in Boston, one in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, another in Manhattan. So it's like I had no one here but my friends. So I'm running, I'm working 8 hours, then running to let the dog out. Then I'm in the hospital 2 to 3 hours. I'm trying to figure all this out. And it was just madness. But I learned along the way about Caring Bridge. I don't know if you know about that. So it's a website where basically you blog your medical journey, and instead of people texting you, emailing, and calling you, "How are you? What's going on?" If they sign up for it, they get the update in their email box. So that'll come into play later. So I start to get support, different things like that. We start having a Team Grayson Facebook page where we do updates, lots of support. So I'm feeling really enriched with, we're thinking of you, we're praying for you, all of those things. And then I bring him home and he's like a newborn baby. It was so terrifying. So he normally at 6'2" weighed about 175, 180. He got down to 145. So I just wanted to bubble wrap him, wanted to bubble wrap our house. I had to get different couches for upstairs, TV, different things like that, because it was normally in the basement and I knew he wasn't strong enough to go up and down the stairs. And so figuring out all that out, going to Walgreens the first week, spending $1,000 on all the medical supplies we needed for him to be at home. It was just crazy. And then my parents called and they said, "You know what? We've thought about it." At the time, they were 65 and 72, and they'd been married 45 years at the time. Now they're 10 years older and married 55 years. And they said, "You know what? We're going to come live with you in shifts." And I felt amazing relief, but also like, oh my gosh, I'm 28 and my parents are going to live with me. I don't want my dad to fold my underwear. I don't want my mom up in my business. But it ended up being like the most incredible gift. And it's still something to this day that forever bonds us together. So they lived with us like 18 of the 27 months that my husband was sick. So he got a lot better, but he was in treatment where it was like he was in this clinical trial through the University of Minnesota where he had chemo like 5 times a week for 3 months, then 3 times a week for 2 months. And all these things I would not have been able to take him. So, laundry, meals, helping with pets, all those different things. And my parents are not pet people. We were not allowed to have pets in the house. And we have had 2 cats and a dog, but they did it with smiles. And it got to the point where my husband was well enough. We went to Las Vegas in April of 2012 to the stupid cancer conference. And, he had a full head of hair, looked really healthy. And, it was just amazing to see him in his element with his people, feeling like he belonged.
What do you do at a cancer conference?
Yeah. So there were different workshops, whether it's about like sex, employment. I don't know if you've ever seen, if you have not seen it, I would highly recommend I believe his name was Sam Reiser or something like that. He wrote the movie 50-50 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Seth Rogen. He was there to talk about his experience because it's based on his true story. So you just get together. So Stupid Cancer is like 19 through 40-year-olds. So people from all over the country get together.
I love the name so much.
Yeah.
It's
and there are hoodies and shirts, and you even have like, they sell Stupid Cancer cards where it's like, you can get out of like, I have cancer. Don't be a jerk. Give me a break. Give me whatever. But it was just so thrilling to see him with people that got it, that knew what it was like, because we discussed many times through his journey that this was his own personal Afghanistan. This was, the war he was going through. And, one of the big things when I'm on different podcasts, because I'm on, grief, loss, cancer, mental health, different things, is I couldn't let him know how scared I was. I couldn't tell him, oh my gosh, I'm afraid you're going to die, da, 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 all of these things. But he had his own people, his own arena, his own things. And then the summer of so that's the spring of 2012, summer of 2012, I went on 2 funny shenanigans in my book. I went on 2 silent retreats, 1 Catholic, I'm not Catholic, 1 Buddhist, I'm not Buddhist, just to get away. Hilarity and antics there, but I just needed my own things throughout this. I'm like going to concerts every now and then with friends, doing my own things, knowing people are probably judging me, but I'm going to have some semblance of norm for myself. And then in August of 2012, he relapsed. So we had to admit him to the hospital on our 8th wedding anniversary. And it took about 4 months for the chemo to get his body where it needed to be. And then in January of 2013, I had surgery for endometriosis at the same time, across the cities, while he had his bone marrow transplant preparation that ultimately broke down his transplant worked, stem cells from an umbilical cord. But his kidneys, lungs, bladder, all of that was just ripped apart from treatments. And he was in the ICU twice. And then ultimately 2 days after I turned 31, I had to take him off life support. And I was super calm the whole time. And I think for me, I know that was the grace of God. Like even the night before he died, I made a heaven playlist because I knew he was going to die. And I played this while I'm holding him and waiting for his heart to stop. And, he's breathing animalistic sounds because he's been on life support and needs the oxygen and whatnot. And I didn't even cry once, which seems really weird to say, but it's like, I saw it happen. I knew what was going to happen. And I was just so pumped that he wasn't going to be in pain because he was on like fentanyl, which is the stuff that like killed Michael Jackson, right? And Prince, they accidentally OD'd, all that stuff. So it was horrible, but it wasn't even him anymore at that point. It was like, he was already gone. I was told on like the 17th, I'm sorry, we'll wait till the 19th. The 19th is my birthday. And I'm like, okay, I'm 31. I'm going to be a widow. This is my life. And I feel like I'm floating above myself watching all of this, but it's like, I'm at peace somehow knowing this is what it is. So in my book, I literally, after I walk out the door, the door closes behind me and it's Rachel 2.0. And then that's the second half of my book. Cause I had to you got to reboot your life like a computer.
That's funny that you said that, because right after Jason died, I posted something on Facebook and it was like, we're beta testing this new life. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We're just going to throw it out there and find the bugs and then probably just live with the bugs because we can't fix them.
And it's so bizarre. I just remember so our church was just down the block and I remember walking there and planning the, memorial service, and I write all this out in the book, and it's so weird because I'm like sitting on this, old yellow 70s couch in the pastor's office thinking
boom,
like,
wow.
I'm thinking like, how many old people have sat here to plan their services, but I'm not old. And I'm like, I'm a WIDOW. Like, this is so weird. And then like walking in the sanctuary for the service, it just feels like another wedding of sorts. It's just so weird, so bizarre. And you're like, why is everybody looking at me? But I felt the same way when I got married too. So it's just weirdness.
When he got sick, What did they give you as far as prognosis? Was it like, oh, this is serious, or you guys can probably kick this?
Yeah, so I knew that it was really serious that he could die, but it was quote unquote a good cancer.
Yeah.
So it was one of the better ones. So until 5 days before he died, I literally never thought he was gonna die. Like, I hate it when people say literally all the time, but I did not think that he was gonna die because I was not quite 31. He was 37. We're young. That's not going to happen. We're going to get better. We're going to go back to the regular scheduled program, before the 23-minute episode ends. And I really assumed that.
Yeah, we hear that over and over.
They did tell us before his transplant, just him and I did not share this with my parents who were also primary caretakers or anyone else. There was only a 19% chance the bone marrow transplant would work. But I thought it's gonna work. It has to work. There are no other options. So I think that was part of the grace in it, was knowing, no pun intended, his name was Grayson. That was part of the grace in it. Just knowing that. But I mean, it was kind of like, the plane's going down, you have to get the parachute or not. He had to get the transplant. So I was just going into it, assuming he would be fine.
Did you experience any anticipatory grief? Or were you just in the moment, like, I'm just doing today, I'm doing all this stuff, like, I'm in the moment?
It was all in the moment. And I really think that, like, the grace of my faith and everything, I didn't know until years later that I had been grieving the entire time because I'd seen his body fall apart. But like, for an example, like, your person's, I don't know how your spouse has died, but or anyone's, but it's like he had like coked or peed or something, right? And he's in the ICU on his bed. And they put him in like one of those Hoyer lifts, and he's up in that thing, up by the ceiling. And he's so tall, his legs are on one end and, his head's over on the other. And it's one of the like saddest images in my mind still to this day, all these years later, because it's just like, how did this beautiful, gorgeous human being get to that? And within looking at that, I knew, like, even 5 days before he died, there weren't any miracles that were going to happen. This was it. This is happening. That's not even really him. Yes, he's there, but that's not really him. So I think it was just like, okay, today's Wednesday. He's dying. I've had 4 out of 5 doctors tell me I'm sorry. This is the way that it's going to go,
I have a sister right now she's had a lot of medical problems and she's been really sick, and I'm watching her grieve her health. And it's really interesting because this is the first time that I've watched somebody with the eyes with my dead husband eyes. Well, that sounds weird. I do not have Jason's eyes.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, good. But watching the similarities of grieving a person and also grieving the expectations for your life, or grieving your health and your well-being, it's interesting how much they intersect and how our knee-jerk reaction is to fix it. And I have found myself pulled to that. I just went to my little sister's wedding and she wasn't able to come, which was devastating. And I just kept being like, how can we fix this? How can we fix this? What can I buy for her? What can I do for her? And it's like, nothing. This is the long haul. This is grief. It's not fixable.
I had a friend that helped me through my grief after my husband died, and her husband had been fighting blood cancer for like 12 years. And he died, and he was friends with my husband. Just briefly, they knew each other through a support group. But I hung out with them like the summer after my husband died. But I remember when her husband died, I tried to jump in and fix it and tell her things. And she ended up having to cut me out of her life because at the time it was really hurtful, right? But it was like, Rachel, like, I came over after he died and I gave her a big hug and she was glad I was there. But I was like, do you want to talk about anything? And she's like, I just want to play with my 5-year-old and his like little toy puppies. And to me, it was like, but I want to fix you. I want to heal you. I want to, and yes. It's just like, And it was one of those things where like I was wanting to have conversations with her for the next few months and she was just like, "Rah." And that's the hardest thing is when you've been through it. That's where I like that I'm like, I have a book, look through it at your leisure. This is how it helped me. I believe this can truly help. I mean, yes, I truly believe this can help millions of people not feel alone. These are the steps. These are things that work for me. Yes, I know it's only my story, but there's literally nothing out there. So my book, I started putting it together in 2014. It's the Caring Bridge post, the Facebook post in chronological order. And then it's my narrative. So it's like first before he got sick, a little bit about us, how we met, our love story, our marriage. But then when I'm navigating insurance, you're right there with me. I'm explaining what it all means. Treatment, diagnosis, everything, finances, your person might not work, how to do this, FMLA, disability. And then the same type of thing with finances after your person dies, you might not be able to afford where you live, all these different things. So and then, Instagram comes into play later in the year. So it's all of that. So it's like a love story toolbox, but I truly know this is the first of its kind ever to give you the resources with a story. And I made sure I knew that before I advertised it as that. And I did that because there's this huge, my whole thing, my social work, social services geekiness is I'm a research nerd and there's literally nothing to bridge this gap. So I'm very excited to write this. But when I started putting it together a year after he died, I had to stop because it was so painful because I was reading these posts of his illness and then him dying. And I was like, ah. So it wasn't until, so he died in April of 2013. It wasn't until like the fall of 2018 that I actually picked it back up where I was able to do that. And then I published it at the end of September, this last fall, 2020. And I even had like a 5-minute mini panic attack. Like, can I go back in the cancer world? Can I go back in this? Cause I had spaced myself so much from that because it was so painful. And within the grieving world and whatnot, I deleted perfectly nice people off of Facebook. I went off Facebook for like 6 or 9 months because I didn't have a uterus. I couldn't have kids. I didn't want to see your happy family. I don't want to see your happy marriage. I don't want to see these things. Or it's like, I don't want to see all these little kids having cancer. And now I'm, doing all these podcasts and I just did this 10-week, I raised $51,000
Wow.
For blood cancer with a team of people behind me, this 10-week thing that ended last Friday. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, including widowhood and cancer, because you're asking and asking and asking and asking. I probably sent 4,000 emails within 10 weeks to people. And they're probably like, Rachel, I haven't seen you in 20 years. Why are you asking me for money? But it's like, I don't want you to be me. We need better treatments, these things. But it's really, really cool that I've been able to process the grief and be in such a healthy place now. I can say, where you are, I've been there and I authentically am so sorry, but here are some resources and this is how I did it. Da, 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 da. Because it's so rare to feel that you have a kindred in that. And I didn't know until you guys, I know, but I didn't know until I started being on so many podcasts, how taboo it is to talk about grief and how these things are. It's just, it happens every day, all the time. But for some reason, people are like, oh dear, they have cancer. Oh my gosh, their person died. And I lost a lot of friends. At the time it was very, very hurtful, but I didn't, people went back to their normal life. People went back to their families, their different things like that. But you really have to be able to find adequate resources when you're in that dark, dark place.
Asking for support and fundraising and all that stuff, that's a big job. That's a lot. So congrats that you got 51. What did you say? 51?
51 and I needed 50. So now I can actually get a grant in my late husband's name and put it towards what I want. And I know someone.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have a new friend that has a kind of lymphoma that's not well researched. And she has 2 littles under 10. She's sick all the time. She's relapsed like 4 or 5 times. So I'm going to say, I want this to go towards Angie and it's going to be in my late husband's name. And I'm just like, yes.
This is your same friend whose husband also died from the same cancer? Or a different one? Oh my gosh.
I know so
When you live in that world. You start to gather those people.
Did you know this friend before the cancer connection, or did you
No,
meet this
she's someone
person
I
because
actually met through like a Bible group at my church like 2 years ago.
See,
So
that's why it's wild. It's like the universe is so interesting.
It's a
So
sneaky universe.
interesting because, I mean, we've seen that happen in our lives too, where it's just like this synchronicity, and it's like as you go along in life and you're trying to help the people that you need to be in their path and they need to be in your path, they like come to you. So that's why I was so curious to see how you met her, because that is just wild.
I have a job. So I work for a health insurance company helping get people connected to counseling. And it's interesting because every now and then I feel like God's like, boom, putting people in my cube. Because if I get a widower or widow, you can't really share your life, of course, not that I would want to, but I'm like, I have been there. I'm so sorry. I lost my spouse. I understand where you are. And like, I can't imagine calling somewhere, and someone being like, saying that right when I was going through it and just feeling that. You feel like someone just gives a crap. Like that's what you need. So it's cool to be able to say that and have people, get that.
Rachel, I'm curious about your life now. We like it when we get to talk to people who are a few years out because it gives us some perspective that a lot of our listeners are desperate for. So I'm curious to know when you started to feel like you were okay, in quotes, because we all know like that's a term that doesn't mean anything. But when you started to feel like life was worth living and you were finding the joy again and having more good days than bad days. And wait, part 2, I want to hear about your relationship status now.
I don't advertise my current life on the back of my book, nor have I talked about it on any podcast. And I've probably been on like 25. Because I discuss it in the epilogue of my book. I don't want it to take away from the resource of if you're there, what you need. But from what you're saying, maybe be more open and talk about the positivity because people need to know it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we never want to take away from the pain that happens in the beginning. No, never do we want to say that that's not a thing. But there is also this perspective that you can't get unless you've been here and now you're there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Here's something that's interesting. I've been thinking about this, Rachel. Tell me what you think. And Anita, of course, as well. So when my husband first died, I had been through like trauma all the way up until I'd met him. I met my first husband when I was like 19, 20, got divorced from him. It was an alcoholic situation, abusive situation. Had a series of then different forms of abusive relationships after that. Then finally, like 10 years later, after, a long time of all that, I met my husband. We were married almost 2 years. He dies after a freaking tonsillectomy. Like, boom, dead. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Are you kidding me? And it was so hard for me to read anything that at the early grief, I mean, I would say for like a year to a year and a half, anybody that would put any sort of phrase in front of me, or if I read a book that talked about, here's the struggle, but now I've moved on, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't even touch the book. I would like throw it across the room. And I can read it now and I'm like, oh, now I'm past that initial really traumatic early part of grief. But what you were saying reminded me of that, about you wanting your book to be a resource for people that are like in the muck and in the mire, and not necessarily say like, well, here's the happy ending and, negate all this stuff. Because it can be both but I do think that it's easy to get away from early grief and to forget how sensitive certain things were at the time. What do you guys think?
I remember my sister gave me that book by I'm going to say her name wrong, but Joan Didion or something like that. She's really, really famous. She wrote a grief book. I read Widows and Stilettos and things like that, which were helpful. But then again, I didn't have a child, which I believe for me, it was easier to move on because it was just me. And for me, the second year was harder than the first. I dated someone 6 months after for 6 months. And that was totally just like lidocaine. Because it was just distracting, you know, it was fun, it was whatever, but totally someone mismatched for me interest wise, body, like he was like a big dude and a hunter. And it was like, I was primarily like vegan and animal rights person. And it was just, he was someone that I knew that was very kind, and God love him. He was amazing. Cause I'd be like, and then I'd be like, want to make out? And he'd be like, no. Like, you're crying about your dead husband. No, I don't think he said it like that, but yeah, I just want to be like sensitive to where someone is in the moment. So like, I haven't even posted a picture. So basically, I got a job. I worked 3 part-time jobs, then selling on eBay, Amazon, whatever I could, having garage sales like 4 or 5 days a week. The 3 part-time jobs were really hard. It was like the 2 early morning, midday were with autistic children. Then it was a lady 3 times a week at night, getting her ready for bed. She had MS. So it's doing all those different things. I could barely make ends meet. You know, I'm trying to keep my house. I thought I'd have filled with kids with my husband that's alive that would help me pay for it. So I'm trying to maintain all these things, trying to date, drinking too much, having one night stands, stuff like that, that were not me at all. And having this like secret life my family didn't know. And it's just, I was so hard on myself a couple years after that. And it was just like, but people that are close to me were like, that was the grief Rachel. That wasn't even the real Rachel. That was the grief Rachel. And it's really intimidating to people to go on a date with a widow, because you do not have an ex. You don't have someone you hate. You have someone that you love, that you care about, that's always going to be a part of you. And I got a job at an insurance company, and literally on the other side of this cube paneled window is this dude who's 11 years older than me, who had a young daughter. We'll just leave it at that. And I remember thinking like, he's kind of older, but he's cute. He's really nice. And I did like a get to know your cube mate little survey via our messenger. And then we both found out we liked like the show 24 and Depeche Mode and The Cure and, you know, New Order and all the stuff. So we started talking about things like that. And I remember telling one of my older sisters that I liked him, and she's 12 years older than me. So like as a teen, we would go visit her for a couple weeks during the summer and things like that. And she's like, no, this is your new career, your new life. You can't like this guy. What if it doesn't work out? In October this year, we will have been married for 5 years. So it did work out. He had been praying for someone to even be like a Christian friend to sit next to him at work. He didn't think this weird, loud chick that was talking about her date, you know, four different dudes a week that she was going on dates with or whatever. And I mean, I probably seemed like this girl that like drank all the time, but I'm really like, I really just will like play My Little Ponies with your daughter and have juice boxes and gummy bears. That's the real me. But I've been like just hard knocks, you know, it's a hard knock life. Like that's what I had been living and breathing, surviving. So it took a while to fully get back to being me, let alone 2 weeks after I start dating him and I have this new job, I have dental surgery, antibiotics rip up my GI tract, and I get a colon disease and IBS. So I'm extremely sick for like the next 2 years, trying to figure out, I have a very specific diet, like all these different things. So it's just pure craziness, but he hung in there with me for it. And it's really cool now because I'm with someone that we've been with. We've each had really, really hard individual lives. And he's had, you know, some abusive relationships type past where women were abusive to him and different things. And, you know, we both work at home for the same company. And if we're not,
you're still cube.
We are. And what's funny is sometimes
just a bigger cube.
Yeah. And what's funny is like, even when we're working, because we're connected to headsets, we'll still FaceTime each other, text each other, messenger each other, or go talk to each other on our breaks.
That's funny.
And you'd think that like you'd want to kill each other being together 24/7 all the time. But when you go through something as horrific as I have and the difficulties he has, you know when you're older and, you know, different things like that. And I remember telling my mom he was moving in after I dated him a couple months. And of course, you know, He's a boy. It doesn't matter how old I am. I'm the baby. He's a boy and he's moving in with me and we're not married, Rachel. But it's one of those things where it's amazing to me that he has fully embraced and loves according to his words. I mean, I know it, but he loves my late husband. And what's been amazing with this cancer fundraiser thing is, he helped me. I edited my book about 8 times. I had it professionally edited as well, but I read the entire thing out loud to him. He would help me write a few different parts, different things when I couldn't articulate it. But that was my story. Within this fundraising thing, he saw other people's stories. So it's like, now there's more inclusiveness to, wow, this really is the world, that her world. I know what she said. I know what I've been told from her parents, but this was really her world. Like I explained it, a grenade was thrown at my world and it blew up. So it's just really cool to have someone that's so supportive, that gets it, sees it, and wants to, advocate and be a part of it. And his daughter is going to be 10 soon. She was 4 when I came into the picture, and we're very, very close. But it's one of those things where, on Friday, it had been, I'm getting closer and closer to this ceremony. There was this big virtual gala. It normally would have been like a black tie thing, where I was running against 6 other people. We're trying to raise as much money as possible. Together, the 7 of us raised $669,000 in 10 weeks. So we get all dressed up, a photographer comes and takes our picture and things like that. And she's wondering, why is this such a big deal? And I told her, people can't advocate for themselves. We have to do this for them. But it's really, I lost my train of thought, but it's a really cool thing to know. Oh, I remember, to know how far I've gone. And I did not expect this. On the 8th anniversary of his death, which is April 21st, my birthday's the 19th. So it's always just kind of a crap timing every year. The first few years I would do something with sisters or friends or whatever on the anniversary of his death. And my birthday around then. The last few years I've worked and I've just been fine. This year I had a really hard time, and could not stop crying most of the day. And I think it's just the emotionalness of this campaign, of feeling it all, seeing it all, other people's stories. I had a panic attack the year he died, going into the next year, because I was leaving him behind in that year. Like that's what that felt like. I had a really hard time when I turned 37, because he died at 37 and I started surpassing him in age. But this past Friday, I just got so angry at cancer and I could not stop crying, because it was more like, this is just so much injustice, so much sadness. This is just BS that people are taking from people, that children are sick. Someone local here in Minnesota, they had like a 4-year-old and then twins that were 9 months old, and both of the girls got leukemia. One of them lived, one of them didn't. And it's just like, why do these things happen? But it's just so exciting to me that I'm happily married again. And, we'll be like kayaking or something, and I'll just be like, have this, epiphany type moment of like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I got here. And I have my husband's name tattooed on my wrist. I have, strength, faith, courage, blessed, different things. And sometimes I really, truly believe that, like, if I didn't have his name tattooed, or pictures or people in my life that also knew him, I might not believe it ever existed. So writing it all down, so cathartic. But it's one of those things where you really, truly do move on, and people move on at different levels. But it really does get better.
See, you did a good job. I love the idea of grief, Rachel, because I think we all experience that. We go through a period where we don't know who we are, and we're not acting like who we used to be or who we're going to be, and we have to figure that out. And but you did, and you came out, and it doesn't mean that you left all of that behind, but you figured out who the real Rachel is, and she's an author. I don't know if you knew that, but she's pretty fancy. Rachel, where can people find your book?
Yeah, Wife Widow Now is on Amazon. You can get it in paperback where there's actually, you can fill out like the budget sheet or different things. Or if you get it in ebook Kindle version, you can actually click on the hyperlinks to take you to different places to help you navigate things.
That's amazing. So check out her book. It's Wife, Widow, Now What? Find it on Amazon. And we're going to do, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Wife, Widow, Now What? And you can ask me anything.
Ooh, any questions. We're going to do a giveaway of her book. So stay tuned for that. And so you guys can get your hands on a copy if you're lucky enough.
So Rachel is a member of our Widow Wives Club. So if you are also in there, you can find her there. So if you've had a chance already to read her book or want to read her book and comment to her, she's available in there. And
if you haven't joined the Widow Wives Club,
do it.
Search in Facebook for the Widow Wives Club. The link is also in our bio on Instagram. And remember to check out our Patreon if you want to keep the podcast going. It's patreon.com/WWDN. We wouldn't mind if you gave us a rating and review. Would not mind at all.
Actually, Anita requires it for optimal mental health for herself. And I require Anita to have better mental health just because.
We hope that you guys have enjoyed the episode today. We hope that Rachel will be able to reach some of you with her book and that you'll be able to find something that helps you or helps somebody else that you know who's going through a similar struggle. Until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Rachel. Thank you so much.
We're two young widows and one widow who, I don't know if you know this, she's an author. And we're just trying to figure out widow we do now.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.